You'll notice those of you who are here regularly, we usually have been doing two lessons from Scripture on this week, and this week I added in the third one from Ephesians, for I thought that we might need a little bit of those kind of reminders these days. There's a difference in kind of the world and the culture. It seems that they just, we're just having a tough days these days. People just are getting aggravated with one another all the time. I mean, it's just a litany of aggravation. Every time you turn on the news, there's this or that goes on. And maybe perhaps we need to be reminded of some of the good stuff in life, some of the call upon our life where we're called to make a difference and to live differently. So I thought maybe this Ephesians passage might help us, especially in light of this gospel passage, this reminder of the presence of Christ and his sustaining ability being the bread of life for us. So this Ephesians passage, there's something interesting, I think, that helps on the outlay of this. Just so you'll know, he's writing to the Ephesians, the church in Ephesus, and he's writing to people who have not always been Christian. These are folks that used to be pagan, just plain old pagans, not anything remotely connected to Christianity. And he's reminding them that to put away that old life and to pick up something new. And perhaps for us, it's sometimes we get bought in, we catch up in the story and the aggravation and the frustration in our world, and it begins to take root and shape in our life. Oh, trust me, this morning, I'm preaching to me first, just so you'll know. I get that way. It's like, daggone it, why do these people have to act that way? And then there are places in life and around the world and even on television in which I see small glimpses of goodness, small glimpses of God's will and kingdom being unveiled on earth. I'll be honest, for the past 2 weeks, pretty much as much TV time as I've had has been watching the Olympics. And I'm ready for the closing ceremony tonight too, but not really. The spirit of the Olympics, I think, is there, and it amazes me the number of those persons who've dedicated much of their life, if not all of their life, to their sport, will outrun, outrace, outswim, out whatever they're doing. And then the person that beats them by a fraction of a second for the gold medal or the silver medal or a medal, those people will congratulate somebody else who may or may not look like them, who may or may not speak their language, who may or may not act like them, who have totally different methods of coaching and experiences. Right there on TV, and I'm like, that's like a personal moment. I don't need to see that, and then I do need to see it. I mean, it's enlivening to my spirit. So this text from us from Ephesians does make a difference. It makes a difference how we see the world, and it makes a difference to encourage us when we get discouraged, when we become more and more cynical or aggravated or frustrated or mad or angry. And yet it gives us some hope in that, even for us. One of my favorite sermons over the years was in college. I actually went to church twice a day oftentimes on college. Don't tell them, but I went to the Presbyterian church because the preaching was real good. And I went to the Methodist church later that day, or vice versa, because the music was real good. And together, I had an excellent Sunday morning, even despite being in college. See, I was a church nerd for a while. Don't you laugh back here. Jeez, talking about the choir loft or the preaching of the choir. But anyway, I would, and one of the sermons that I still remember now, almost 30 years later or something like that, was the preacher said that some folks have just enough Christianity to make them miserable. Have you ever met somebody like that? They get just enough. They get all the thou shalt nots. But they miss the grace and the love and the hope and the peace that Christianity brings to us. the ideas and the tenets of the faith, the strength of the faith, the power to see through the difficult days. Oh, they miss it. Just enough to make them miserable. Some of you have heard me tell this story now. I'm about out of stories. I've been here forever. But back in a church, there was the one lady that sat on the back corner in the back section of the back pew in this huge church that was barely empty, barely full. I was practicing for a pandemic. But she sat back there, and she had the biggest scowl on her face every time. We had this usher, and he was a trip. His real job was to oversee money burning at the Federal Reserve in Richmond. That was cool. And he was smaller than I was. They used to laugh at him trying to open the gates for roll the money in and all this because he was so tiny. He was also one of those people that traded in his little two-door car for a minivan so he could go around on Sunday morning and get the little ladies that still needed to come to church. Didn't have another way. I always think of his heart. But he looked at that lady that sat in the back corner in the back pew in the back section in the back furthest back of the church with her scowl on her face one day, and he looked at her and he says, you know, that part about sheep and goats in the Bible, being in the same fold, he said, you got to be a goat. She had just enough Christianity to make her totally miserable. She missed it. She missed the whole bang, wagon, everything. She missed it. And yet here in Ephesians, there's something else. There's something better. There is. There's an honesty that comes in the faith. Put away the falsehoods. You know, I was thinking, it seems to me that half-truths are peddled at a 4 times rate in every news cycle that I can find. I don't even want to know if the half-truths are even said, much less propagated. They continue to grow in these ways in which just they confuse me. I'm like, let's listen to experts. Let's listen to people who know what they're talking about. Let's don't discount years and dedication and the very idea of understanding of an expert in their field. Let's don't do that. Let's listen to people who actually know what they're talking about. I mean, you could send me to the Olympics for any sport over there, and I guarantee you I would be dead last. Probably just dead from trying to run around that track or whatever it is. I don't know nothing about that. But there are probably things that I can do that they can't. And there's some things that I do know something about. But I don't know anything about that. But I do think that we are called to speak truth. One of my professors in seminary he left this lasting imagery of angriness. We talked about this passage in pastoral care. And it says, be angry, but don't let the sun go down on your anger. You know, in the Hebrew, now I'm not going to give you a full Hebrew lesson because, once again, I am not qualified. But I do remember in Hebrew that consonants, they're usually, each word has 3 little consonants. And it's how they're pointed which gives you the vowels which makes the words. It's not a test. I'm just telling you this But in Hebrew, the same 3 root letters for your anger and your nose are the very same. Can you imagine why? Oh, you've watched somebody get really mad. And what happens? Their nose begins to swell. They kind of get puffed up. They get angry, red-faced. It's called this nose thing and this anger come in the same thing. And they observe that, and so they begin to put that together as the same kind of root. Because it does make a difference where we see it. But what my professor said is, you know, anger sometimes is a good thing. When you see someone being treated wrongly, when you get mad at a system that doesn't work, when you get mad at injustices that you see in the world, when someone mistreats you, yes, you can get angry. I mean, people say, what would Jesus do? Well, turning the tables over and running the animals out of the temple with a bullwhip is within the realms of possibility. He was not his pleasant, sweet disposition self at that moment. But it says be angry, but don't let the sun go down on your anger. That's a whole different thing. Yeah, get angry, get upset. Don't let it eat away at you. Don't let it resolve in your heart and in your mind. Don't let it take root and consume your life, consume all that you are. Be angry and let it go. There are people that, I've seen it over the years, and they get mad at somebody else and won't speak to them for years or months or days. One of my dear friends, she said that the last thing she ever remembered talking to her husband about was she was mad because they were agreeing to go on a trip with somebody else. She did all the driving, and they said, well, we'll just follow you there. And she didn't drive as fast as the other couple. And she was upset, and she was mad. And she said that she went to bed, and they weren't speaking. And yeah, you got it. He died during the night. She said it took months for her to resolve peace, get through that. Oh, that's a worst case scenario perhaps, but it's a true story. But to be angry is one thing, but to let it eat away at you, get over it. Is it really in 100 years going to make a difference? I used to say that expression all the time, and I've forgotten now the habit of it. I think I need to go back to it. Is it going to make a real, true difference in 100 years? Whether somebody wears their hair one way or another, decides to wear that pair of shoes instead of this pair of shoes. Oh, well, this triteness of life. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't allow room for the devil, the evil to grow within us in our culture. Thieves got to give up their stealing, work honestly. I mean, the text says that pretty blatantly, and I think y'all get that. But there is this dedication and what it means to be Christian and to live out Christian morals in our business relationships, in our caring one for another, in the way that we care and pay, where we shop. Those things make a difference in our lives. Our places that we support and endeavor enabling the world to be a different place, a better place. Are they caring for their employees? Are they caring one for another? Makes a difference. I love in their hymnal, Roman numeral page 7, the introduction. And this is John Wesley's directions for singing. Some of you have heard me say this too over the years, that I love the fact that Wesley reminds us to take up Christianity and to sing and to other things with good courage. It's number 4. He says, sing lustily and with good courage. Don't stop, don't give up. He also says, beware of singing as if you were half dead or half asleep, but lift up your voice with strength. Be no more afraid of your voice now, nor more ashamed of its being heard, than when you sung the songs of Satan. I think that's kind of connected to this passage. Because he's talking to people who were pagans and who are now Christians. The vigor and the effort that people put into things for a while, and then it kind of goes away. Take up the courage. Keep going. Don't stop. Don't get distracted, but keep on going. Continue to talk one another up, lift each other up. Don't let the evil come out of your mouth. That's tough, but it's necessary. Think about what that is. Is it helpful? Is it true? Is it necessary? Just run your test. The old saying is, think before you speak. Let's lift each other up. And we all get like that. It's like, daggone it, you're just getting on my nerves today. And yet at the same time, that inward prompting of Christ calls us into a new way. Put it away, and therefore be intimidators of God as beloved children, and live in love. Care for one another, lift one another up. Wear a mask even though they're aggravating, because we care for one another. People looked at me the other day, I was wearing my mask, and they said, well, what are you wearing your mask for? I says, well, I just want to make sure as best I can, because I think I'll be okay if I ever get COVID. but as best I can to make sure that nobody gets it from me. Because my conscience weighs on me heavy about that kind of thing. Live in love as Christ loved us, gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. To live our life as intimidators of Christ, to be able to offer that to God and one another as our tribute, as our praise, as our gratitude for God's grace in our life. Oh, it's never easy. Yeah, it'd be easy just to be that hateful curmudgeon in a corner that never smiled. But you know, they say, and I'm not a medical doctor either, but they say that it actually takes more muscles in our face to frown than it does to smile. So it's a lot less work to smile, to lift each other up and to encourage, to allow that Christ who's claimed us through these waters of baptism to take root in our heart, to grow and to be nurtured and sustained, to go forth into the world bravely, knowing that Christ goes with us. All glory, honor, and power be to the one who was, who is, and who is to come. Amen.